Well, Planned Parenthood took issue with the new Marilyn Monroe movie on Netflix called Blonde. They say that it is anti-abortion. Now, I was interested in this because Planned Parenthood has no small stake in abortion. The company's 2019 and 2020 report shows that in that year, they provided over 354,000 abortions, which makes them the largest abortion provider in the United States. So obviously, I'm going to be interested when a company with a stake in something decides that something that is a piece of art or a piece of media should be canceled. What are they saying here that we are not supposed to say? Now, the only numbers that Planned Parenthood has provided so far in official reports were 2019 to 2020. We still don't have any more recent figures than that, but that's about 3% of what they do, but still makes them the largest provider of abortions in the U.S. And therefore, they are incapable of speaking objectively about the subject. They irrefutably make a lot of money on abortion and birth control, and we'll see later transgender hormone therapy. Their total revenue in 2019 and 2020 was $1.6 billion. Nearly 40% of their funding comes from government grants and Medicaid. So, if you are a U.S. taxpayer, you should be interested to hear what they think is acceptable speech. So let's get to the movie. A spokesperson for Planned Parenthood named Karen Spruch, I think that's how you say it, or Spruch, spoke to The Hollywood Reporter and condemned this movie for being anti-abortion. So again, when I hear of a government-funded agency wants to cancel something, especially about women's bodies, my spidey sense goes off. So here is what this Planned Parenthood spokesperson said. She said, as film and TV shapes many people's understanding of sexual and reproductive health, it's critical these depictions accurately portray women's real decisions and experiences. While abortion is safe, essential health care, anti-abortion zealots have long contributed to abortion stigma by using medically inaccurate descriptions of fetuses and pregnancies. And this new film, Blonde, bolsters the message with a CGI talking fetus depicted to look like a fully formed baby. So I watched the movie this weekend so that you don't have to. It is beautifully done, and Ana de Armas is a vision. She is amazing the way they made her up to be Marilyn Monroe, but it is a movie about a person who is in a lot of pain, and she makes a lot of unconscious decisions. She is constantly abused. It's really hard to watch. I can't say I enjoyed it. I was actually thrilled when it was over. But
your words to me were, because I was up here in the studio working on the studio, and she's like, do you want to watch this movie with me? And I said, no, I don't. I was watching some monster documentaries up here in my office. I literally watched
thank you.
I watched a Seth Breedlove movie on American werewolves, and I was cleaning the studio. And after you were done with the movie, you texted me and said, that was awful. Those were your words.
It was a really not fun experience. It was pain embodied. But I was specifically looking to see if me as a woman, do I have a problem with the abortion scenes? I can't say I enjoyed them. They are very graphic. You see a specula actually parting the lips of her reproductive parts.
Okay.
To put a fine point on it. Yet I think they were trying to point out how hard this is for their main character. Now,
so what you're saying is a hard decision for this woman to go through.
That's what they're saying, and I guess that's what we are not supposed to say, right? No one knows if Marilyn Monroe ever had an abortion. We do know that she actually really wanted children. She said so many times. And in the film, she also has a miscarriage, which supposedly did happen to her. But this is historical fiction, and obviously all biographics take liberties. But in the film, Monroe does want to be a mother, and she is haunted by her abortions. She feels spoken to by her child, and this is depicted by an image of a fetus that speaks to her, and she reacts to it. And this is the part that Planned Parenthood has such a problem with. They don't think you should anthropomorphize a fetus. And that's where I want to take a beat. They think that people on the right will use this to show that a child has sentience and therefore should not be terminated. Now, I don't want to argue that point. I want to argue the point that we should all be able to say that a woman can have a connection with a baby at any stage, as well as be able to say that a woman cannot have a connection. Like, we always get those crazy stories about a woman who doesn't know she's pregnant until she goes into labor.
Oh, I had a friend. Yeah.
You know,
I worked with a producer on a show called The Daily Buzz, and she had a friend growing up who we all couldn't get over this story. She's like, oh yeah, my good friend growing up, she didn't know she had a baby. She went, like, just one day, she just goes into the hospital and they're like, you're about to give birth. She's like, what?
So
no, I'm
obviously, this is a spectrum of experiences, right? Those are crazy experiences. But for me, like, I had 2 children, and we felt like a third child was calling to us before we had even conceived. So are we not supposed to? It was actually Clayton who felt like there's someone else waiting for, and he was right. And we had that baby, and she's wonderful. So are we not allowed to say that you have an emotional connection with babies?
Right. So what Planned Parenthood is saying is, okay, so she has this fetus in her, and she's really she's haunted by it. She's haunted by it. She feels like it's speaking to her, even though maybe it's not fully sentient at that stage. We don't know, but she's having this that's the way the film is portraying it. That she's
as a loaded emotional experience,
and they have a problem with this.
But we're not supposed to say that, right? Glamour magazine even calls these scenes being gaslit by weeks-old clumps of cells. Which I have such a problem with. Like, the spirit of conception cannot haunt you. You have to, like, so for anyone who's pregnant right now and is happy about it, you don't really have a baby in there that is speaking to you in any way, right?
No, Jared.
You just don't.
Jared says in the chat, Clayton, were you pregnant? No, I was not pregnant. I know it's 2022. I was not pregnant. She was pregnant. And we felt an immediate, beforehand, we felt an immediate connection.
Right. He was saying, like, I think there's someone else coming for us. Like, he felt a connection to a child, right? But you're not supposed to. And, again, I find this severely reductive to say you don't feel this in your heart, and they should not have portrayed abortion as hard or haunting. Now, again, we're talking about a piece of art, and it's a film, but it's trying to convey a woman's heartbreak, which we're not supposed to say if we are woke. It doesn't even matter that it's Marilyn Monroe. This could be anyone. But Planned Parenthood is not for that. They continue to say, Planned Parenthood respects artistic license and freedom. However, false images only serve to reinforce misinformation and perpetuate stigma around sexual and reproductive health care. Every pregnancy outcome, especially abortion, should be portrayed sensitively, authentically, and accurately in the media. We still have so much work to do to ensure that everyone who has an abortion can see themselves on screen. And it's a shame that the creators of Blonde chose to contribute to anti-abortion propaganda and stigmatize people's healthcare decisions instead. So, okay, I'm interested in this. Every pregnancy outcome should be portrayed authentically. I really don't understand that. So then, no creative license about the emotional experience that is pregnancy?
Right. And what Planned Parenthood is saying is that if you get pregnant, you are not allowed to have any emotional connection to that fetus.
Until I don't know when. So
until
what about
9 months, or until when the baby pops out?
I'm not sure.
Now I'm in love with you. But beforehand, I can't have any emotional kind of feeling spiritually.
I don't know why you guys are getting so up in arms about it. I walk by pregnant, feel nothing.
Oh.
When I see those.
I don't know. Well, how about this movie? Would this be okay? Because this is anthropomorphizing of fetus. That's the whole premise of this film.
There's so much things in the 1980s that we got away with.
Do you think that this film would never work in 2022?
I don't think the woke mob would crush these films. Think about how many movies we grew up with in the 1980s. There's no way most of those movies would get made today, right?
Yeah.
We were watching one the other night. We were something with, I don't know, it was a Kindergarten Cop or something. We were watching with the kids, and there was like a scene where like, whoa, like I can't believe
you can't say that.
You can't say that anymore. And it was like stuff you call out of.
Looking back at like Friends, like watch Friends. There's a lot of it where it's like, that would not go today.
Seinfeld, you can't do anything.
Well, I think what Planned Parenthood is trying to do is they object to the actual projection of the fetus and saying that abortion is hard. right, or haunting, or has any emotional repercussions, even though, of course, it's more fraught than, say, having a mole removed. I just worry here that we might jump on a cancel culture that allows Planned Parenthood to remove speech and an expression that shows the emotional experience of a pregnant woman. And if we're not allowed to discuss this or even artistically portray it, then this is going to lead to more money and power for Planned Parenthood. Now, I was not initially anti-Planned Parenthood, but after this story, I'm not necessarily pro-Planned Parenthood either. They obviously do a lot of good things for women who otherwise can't afford to receive, let's say, breast screenings or STI screenings and that kind of thing. But they are the largest provider of synthetic hormones to young people in the U.S., full stop.
What does that mean?
Well, it used to mean birth control, which is a synthetic hormone. And there, in most offices, young people can get birth control mostly without, almost always across the board without parental consent. And birth control has a lot of health risks. We don't talk about it because it's stigmatized, but
blood clots, stroke.
Birth control, yes. It's given to women without discussion, for good or bad, right, about the reproductive or about the health risks, not even just to their reproduction. Now, I'm not saying that birth control is bad or that giving it to young people is bad, but I am saying that there is that's a discussion for another time so that we don't get distracted. I am saying that birth control has a lot of health risks and that Planned Parenthood makes a lot of money from synthetic hormone distribution, and that is worth noting before we listen to what they have to say about the cancel culture. In the 2019-2020 report that I talked about, Planned Parenthood was the second largest provider of transgender hormones. That includes cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers. But since Roe v. Wade was overturned, reports are that they are now the largest. Over 200 Planned Parenthoods offer puberty blockers and or cross-sex hormones to children as young as 16 with parental consent and adults over 18 without parental consent. We have discussed many times how these pharmaceuticals can lead to infertility and sterility, but Planned Parenthood is unapologetic about this. Here's a website from a California office of Planned Parenthood. It says what to expect on your first visit. In most cases, it says they will be able to prescribe hormones on the same day as your first visit. The same day you walk in, you get cross-sex hormones. No letter from a mental health provider is required. You can just get it, right? Here's another office in Western Pennsylvania. Most patients are prescribed hormones that day. Our clinicians will work with you to help you decide what is best for you. They're not giving you this for free, you guys. They get paid for this. They get paid from the government or Medicare. And according to NPR, over 35,000 people sought transgender hormone treatment with Planned Parenthood in 2021. This is unequivocally the medical industrial complex. It is biological intervention that necessitates for-profit industry. The medical industrial complex has no need for healthy human reproduction, which is why we need to discuss it, the bad and the messy, while we are still allowed, because what they are saying here is we do not want this to be allowed. Thus, the attack on Blonde, the movie, a movie that makes reproduction hard and emotional. That does not serve the medical industrial complex. So our role here on this show is to have conversations that actually connect us to our natural world and our bodies and their functions before it is punished by the cancel culture, because we can have this discussion now about abortion and how that is a function of a woman's body and that it is hard and that it is an emotional. We may not if they have their way. Although I don't necessarily think that means you have to watch Blonde. It has a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I agree with that rating.
Right. So separate story there. Natalie Chavez, super chat here, says in 2014, there was a study. 64% of pregnant women said they were forced to get an abortion. Coercion can quickly lead to violence. The leading cause of pregnant women's deaths is murder.
Okay.
Wow.
That is a shocking statistic.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
I appreciate that. And this is just what I think. I am concerned about the, shutting down of any kind of projection of a woman's emotional experience when it comes to reproduction, because I think that there is profit behind it from the pharmaceutical industrial complex, and that scares me. That's what I think. I would like to know what you think as well. I welcome your comments in the chat.